What is going on, lovely people? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that all of you guys are having a wonderful evening. This is the Real Housewives of Atlanta season Sweet 16, episode 6 recap, Peace Interrupted. So it opens up with the producers just asking the ladies what they thought about the stunt that Kenya pulled at her hair care event, putting Brit on billboards and just trying to embarrass her as a way to retaliate from Brit essentially threatening Kenya with the pow pows. So the ladies are like, I'm I'm upset. I'm disappointed. Porsha said she didn't want to film anymore. Cynthia said that she thought it was beneath her. And I agree. I agree with Cynthia. Kenya, at the end of the day, she can be mad at Cynthia, call her a bad friend. She can be mad at Brit Eady. She can be mad at X, Y, and Z, right? But the truth of the matter is, I think that Kenya is really upset at herself because what you don't do is you don't take the bait. You're not every adversarial conflict that you're invited to, you don't have to show up at. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that Kenya even would have went through with it if she hadn't been doing so many shots in the back, right? So the shady producers made sure to put her on blast on that. But yeah, I mean, if people try to bait you into ridiculous arguments, and the fact that Britt did come to her event apologetic with those flowers in the card, and Kenya made a spectacle out of herself, essentially, when she was trying to make a spectacle out of Brit Eady. It blew up in her face, and I feel like that's just really misdirected anger. She's really mad at herself. But Brit, the opening scene after they interviewed the ladies was Brit was crying on the couch. 48 hours later, her husband walks in and she shows him her phone, and he's just like, "Oh wow, Her husband seems really, I don't know if he was distracted, disconnected, just really disassociating from her, period. Like, he is just giving disinterested. That's that's the adjective I'm looking for, because he was sitting, pretty far away from her. She's crying her eyes out. She's in her confessional, like, listen, I made some mistakes when I was younger. And we all have, that's a part of being young. And unfortunately, hers were filmed, right? I hope none of mine were filmed. No, I'm joking, but you know what I mean? Like, people, you just do, just impulsive things because you're young. Your brain isn't fully developed until you're 25. I feel like everything before we're 25, it really shouldn't count. But, hey, in the US, you can be tried as an adult, as a teenager child, okay? But Britt, she made some missteps with her ex-boyfriends. She allowed him to film her while she was, um, given a BJ, and I hope I'm not demonetized for that. But and then she said that she had tried her hand at the webcam thing. You live and learn, and you grow. And I feel like at this point, in my life, in the ladies' lives, one would hope, right, that you could just let some stuff brush off your shoulder. Like, them going back and forth over this petty stuff, it's just like, I'm telling you, man, like, the more I think about Kenya's situation, and I'm still waiting for her confessional tonight. It's what, 9:40, and I have not gotten any notifications from Ms. Moore. But listen, um, at the end of the day, I feel like she wasted $400,000, and who knows who else was in that at her event that were, aspiring to work with her, that were wanting to possibly collaborate with her. I think she had Miss Lawrence there, who was a friend of the show back in the earlier seasons. And I think that Miss Lawrence has a hair salon as well. Oh, I'm sorry, Kenya is live. Oh no, I don't know. But anyway, let me finish this recap, and then I'll hopefully by that time I'll be able to bring you guys her recap. If not tonight, then tomorrow. But Kenya fumbled the bag. Brittany's crying out to her husband. He is looking like he's more interested in what's going on with his phone than with her. He gives her a little side church hug. And while she's like crying on the couch, he didn't even like sit beside her on the couch. Like he was fully standing while he was giving her a hug. I feel like, and that's probably why, and not, I'm not trying to diagnose Brittany or whatever, but I feel like she's she's crying out for help or attention at least. And she's not even getting that from her own husband, Um, and I feel like maybe that's why she was so angry and upset at Kenya for, Kenya not giving her a hug in earlier episodes, or Kenya, essentially paying her dust and ignoring her pleas for help. It's just, I feel like Brit is, she's largely neglected in her own marriage. And I feel like that's showing up in different ways. And I'll come back to that too, because she goes hard at the ladies at that peach, excuse me, not, well, they are peaches, but the peace lunch at the end of the episode. So I feel like it's a cry for help in regards to negligence from her own husband. All right, moving on. So moving on to Shamea, who, did anybody else see her kind of tap the private chef on the bottom a little bit? Not that I'm trying to, I thought that was interesting. Maybe they're just super close, but I was like, Shamea, she has a private chef whipping up, chicken and just all kind of goodies, fruit, and I saw some chocolate covered strawberries and stuff, scalloped potatoes, and he's doing his thing in the kitchen. So all the ladies come over to her house to just further discuss how they're feeling and unpack everything that went on at Kenya's event. And they're all disappointed. They called to check in on Kenya to see how she was doing, but largely I feel like everybody, the consensus of the group is that Brit Edie was, and I don't want to say like she just came out of thin air, but she was not half as seasoned as Kenya. If Kenya can get through her issue with Phaedra in regards to her flirting with Apollo while they were in Anguilla, if she can make up with Porsha after Porsha literally put her paws on her, dragged her, by her hair across the floor during season 9, I think. And if she can make up with Porsha, I feel like if she can get past that, there is no way after, going through all of that, she survived the whole DV episode with her ex, Matt. She was, a quote unquote accused, I guess, of hiring Walter with his uninterested stuff. The list goes on and on. When Nene had that pajama jam thing and her friend Brandon got into it with, was that Peter and Apollo, and everybody was fighting. Candy wanted to fight over Todd. Like, child, let me tell you something, just from watching all of that, right? Like they lived it, but we have watched all of that. There would be rarely anything that I would let rattle me after all of that. Like Brit saying, I got, pow pows and I got whips and I got this and I got that. And again, shout out to the shady producers. They showed in earlier seasons when Kenya actually did have that thing on her. You know what I'm saying? Like she had that heater, okay? And she, had it in the case and all that stuff. But hopefully she has it locked away now that she has Brooklyn. This is before, this was pre-Brooklyn. But I'm just like, for her to lose her whole mind, her business, her husband, her, $400,000 and her job. Like, girl, you lost everything over what? Somebody that you've known existed less than 6 months, less than a year. Come on, Kenya. Like, that was what I got from all the ladies. Yes, they were worried about her, but they were just disappointed. I mean, I am too. Um, so we move on to Porsha. You know, one thing I've noticed about Porsha is she has changed so much. And I'm not even talking about physically. Like, yeah, she has a glow up. I love Porsha's style. Her fashion is, on point from earlier seasons. They all have, right? That's just the progression of housewives in every franchise. But she has become so self-centered. In earlier seasons, it was all about Cordell. She was all about the other ladies. Um, and I'm not saying that's healthy either. There has to be a balance. But Porsha, I mean, just from even the first episode of Atlanta, where she came into Shamea, or maybe that wasn't the first episode, but she came to Shamea's birthday party, what, like 3 hours late, right? When she was getting her car from her husband. She made it about her. Now they're talking about Kenya. Porsha redirects the conversation back to her. I think even in the snippet next week in the episode, you guys watch at the end, she says when they're all at the table in next week's episode, she's like, it's all about me, right? What, she points her nails back at her. She's like, me. She will redirect the attention. And again, I get it, right? Simon, to me, and this is just me being honest, outsider looking in, he never really gave that he was very trustworthy. Case in point, Porsha, if you can steal that man from Fallon that easily, that's not somebody with a strong moral fiber, moral character to begin with, right? So her talking about, she thought that he was safe, and she brings up the fact that she, tried to ask him about Pilar, her daughter with Dennis. The Pilar was asking about him. She's crying that he just seems, very disinterested. He left it unread. Again, to me, Simon is not somebody who inspired that type of confidence, right? Um, but Porsha's never been a very strong. She doesn't seem to have a very strong sense of reading people when it comes to their character. Again, going back to Cordell. But yeah, Simon, we don't know where he is. Hopefully he's not in El Salvador, but who knows? I know that he's with ICE. He could possibly be back in Nigeria, hopefully, but I don't know if we'll ever see him again. Hopefully, like I said, he's okay. But yeah, he never came across to me as somebody who, had integrity like that. So for her to be again crying and, falling to pieces, just like, the men in Atlanta are not, they are not, over the past few seasons. Now I will say, shout out to Shamea's husband, Gerald. This man is, he loves her down. She said even after she took the Browns to the Super Bowl during their first date, that he still was just, so enamored with her. And, this man has a good job. He's a good man, Savannah. Okay. Sterling Hall, right? He gives her, $500,000 cars, and he just loves her down. All he wants is a family. She's working on that through surrogacy. But yeah, Gerald is holding him down because the rest of the men, Charles Oakley, Brit's husband, Mike, and Kelly's ex-husband, the rest of the men, I'm looking at them sideways, okay? And Simon is included in that, although, again, I don't think the Simon's going to be a problem in the years to come. So hopefully he lands on his feet safely in Nicaragua. Or not, Lord, Nigeria. Okay, moving on. So the ladies are toasting. Drew lets us know that she's cousins with Michael Jordan, which is amazing. Let me tell you something. If Michael Jordan was my cousin, not only would I lead with that, no, I'm joking, but I feel like she should have a lot more pull in entertainment industry. That hopefully that Mike could have, hooked her up with somebody a little bit more, just a better individual than than Ralph. Another basketball player or something. You know what I mean? Like, man, if your maiden name is Jordan and you have direct ties to Michael Jordan, like, I would have, you know what I mean? Like, I would have been really close with my family. Like me and Juanita Jordan, like, Auntie Juanita, take her under your wing because we got Ralph in the basement, just just a troll in the basement, literally, because that's what he does all day. I feel like he just trolls her all day. Speaking of, so Drew is trying to get the girls with the kids together. It's Father's Day weekend, so she's packing, and she calls her daughter over to come get her hair done. She has to do the mommy countdown, like 4 or 5. Let me tell you something. I used to babysit. I don't have any kids. But when I used to babysit for this one family, very affluent, very, shout out to them, right? Black family. When the first day I walked in, the kids were so unruly that I started laughing because I had never seen kids act like that before. They really act like they had no home training. And I'm not advocating it, and I'm definitely not about to spank nobody else's kids. But what I would do is I would put them in the corner for however long, whatever their ages were. And I babysat for this family for years, okay, when I was in college. But um and I would make sure they understood why. And I would be like, you got one warning. And if you repeat the same behavior, you're going in the corner. Point blank in the period. It don't matter. And if we're out in public, we'll go to the bathroom and you can stand in the corner of the bathroom. Don't touch it. I don't want any kind of germs on you. Well, we're gonna be there for, 6 minutes or however, old they were, whatever. You get one warning, and then if you act up one more time, it's it. Ain't no 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This ain't, I'm not Janet Jackson. Ain't nobody got time for the Rhythm Nation over here. Drew, again, I love her to death, but she needs a she needs a backbone, not only with her ex-husband, but also with her kids. Because I was just cackling like, girl, not at her own house. Child, please. That little girl would have been in the corner so fast on the first time. Like her daughter looks about what, 7 or 8 or something like that. You need to nip that in the bud when they're like 4, 3, 4. Anyway, moving on. So Kelly is talking with her daughter, unfortunately, about her ex-husband. And it is really difficult, right? Because you want your children to be happy. And again, like I said, the men in Atlanta, they're not sending their best on these reality shows. But it makes me sad that, Kelly has had such a difficult time with her ex. And her daughter, essentially, she's like, I don't want to get married because I don't want to be like you. And that broke my heart. I was like, dang, that's a really tough thing to say to your mom. But she did Kelly did say, do you want to go back to therapy? And the daughter was like, yeah, and which is good, right? Because she can work through that pain that she experienced in the past. And, Kelly said, hopefully she will have a happy marriage. You know what I mean? Even if Kelly wasn't able to model that, she can work out all those issues in therapy and find true love as she grows older. So I did get ahead of myself a little bit with Drew and Ralph. So Drew, like I said, after she's packing, getting the kids ready for the weekend, and gets her daughter's hair and everything together. So they go downstairs. She gets the kids something to eat. They're eating breakfast. And after she prays, you know what I mean, Ralph comes up out of the basement and, you know, he surprises her because he's usually downstairs. And so she's like, she asks him or she tells him that he needs to pay for the exterminator. So they must have, you know, some friends running around there. And he's upset. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, you know, you don't pay no bills around here in this house and blah, blah, blah. He reminds me so much of Martell Holt that is painful. And I really would love, and I know Melody's probably sick of reality TV, but I would really love if Melody Cherie could, and I don't want to say like mentor Drew, but just have a discussion with her, you know, give her some kind of guidance to break away from that malignant, narcissistic ex-husband of hers. Because, or I know, well, they're soon to be, I guess, ex-husband, but he's so toxic, you know, like Drew's like, bye, you know, she leaves and she's with her sister. I think they said they're going to a hotel because her sister packs her a bathing suit, which is nice, right? She's like, you know, for the jacuzzi, and that's great. Get under those, you know, warm bubbles and that spa and just relax a little bit because Ralph is a troll and a half. He really is. He was talking about reporting her on the app. She's like, let me get out of here because I don't want him to say I'm on the premises. Like, who wants to live under that stress and unnecessary drama? And that can't be good for their children. I want her to, you know, meet Mel for lunch and just talk it out because he is a headache and a half. And I feel bad for the kids. But anyway, I love that Shamea is the breakout star for this season. Like, I love the fact that she has a full time peach. She's coming to her own. She walks into the music studio and she's meeting RL from the group Next. I love his song that he had with Deborah Cox, you know, We Can't Be Friends. So the fact that, you know, she's real cool with his wife, Lena. They have another producer there. His name is B Flat. And she's working on her music. She's following her dreams. And I love that, right? Because her husband has has the bills taken care of. She can focus on her creative endeavors. And I absolutely love that. He's written, you know, Ariel's written for Luther Vandross. He's worked with Jamie Foxx, Genuine. The list goes on and on. So I'm looking forward to hearing her music. And I really do. I love that, you know, she's breaking out of, you know, a lot of people thought that she was like, you know, just Porsha's friend and she was a friend to the show. And again, I think that Porsha is really jealous of Shamea and her lifestyle, her loving husband. I know that those are all the things that Simon had promised her. I'm sure Cordell probably promised her those same pipe dreams earlier on. But Shamea's husband, you know, like Gerald is the real deal. He has a real job with a real, you know what I mean? Like real dividends. He really loves her. And he's everything that Simon was not, you know? Simon was a fraud. I mean, literally scamming people. And so the fact that, you know, Shamea is out here working on her music, I feel like that's why Porsha shaded her, talking about, oh, that's Drew. And Shamea's like, no, this is my voice. You know what I mean? And Porsha doesn't want Drew working on music either because she's working with Dennis. Porsha. Oh my goodness. She's like, Porsha, Porsha, Porsha. She is just anti-music this season. She don't want to hear from Drew. She don't want to hear from Shamea. She said, I don't want to hear it. She says, I'm going through a divorce. And she is not here for people's, you know, their albums and their lives blossoming all around her. But listen, I feel like with Porsha, she really focuses on her work, focuses on her companies, focuses on her daughter, and focuses on growing and maturing, you know. I feel like she'll get to where she wants to be. So Shamea is visited by Angela and Drew. And again, I'm glad to see Drew there because, she's pursuing her musical endeavors as well. So she's in the studio with RL. And I love that, while Shamea is in confessional, um, they ask her to sing and she sings beautifully. She's like, y'all gonna hear this song, okay? Um, one way or the other, because people have really been trying to, but that's what happens when you're on top. You know what I mean? Like Shamea is the it girl this season. I know a lot of people, myself included, thought it was going to be either Kenya or Porsha, but I feel like they both have sabotaged that. Listen, you can never win when you play dirty, honey. In the words of the great Nene Leakes, which Nene has a show on YouTube as well, so I'm gonna have to check that out. But that's a far fall from grace, right? Being the number one ladies on Bravo's Real Housewives of Atlanta to joining all of us here on the YouTube streets. But that's okay. There's room enough for everybody. Welcome. Welcome. So the ladies are, in the studio talking about their music and their gifts and their upcoming albums. And I'm excited for them. I actually heard that Drew's album is really, really good. And I'm really glad to hear that because, Drew, she is a masterful storyteller. That girl can tell some tall tales. And so, listen, you put it to a beat and some music and you get some sales behind you, and hopefully she can move out of that house and on to a better one that she doesn't have to deal with Ralph and all of his foolishness and just let him have it, and her kids can move onward and upward. That's what I'm talking about. Financial mobility, letting the things in the past rest, pay them dust, which is what again we wish Kenya would have done, right? Focus on the bag, focus on financial freedom, and focus on forward movement. So speaking of moving forward, right? Brit actually has a visit from her mother, which is good. I am really glad to, see her have that family support. We learned that she's not as close as she would like to be with her sisters, although she says that this situation with Kenya has actually brought her and her sisters closer together. So that's good, right? That's a silver lining in all of the foolishness. But, she tells her mom that she's been sad. And she says, surprisingly, my mom is very supportive. And the fact that she says surprisingly lets me know that Brit has largely felt unsupported, right, by her family, at least her mother and her sisters in the past. Again, you can tell. One, she picked an unsupportive spouse, so that goes into that pattern of behavior, right? That a lot of people will choose the dysfunction that they're used to, right? Subconsciously or not. I mean, I have to be aware of my own patterns because you have to do the work. And even if you were brought up in a certain way, it's like you have to be aware of that and check that behavior and reassess and realign that. So I feel like that's kind of what Britt is doing. I'm reaching out to her mother for support, which is great. She says that she feels like she was attacked, because she was pretty, which, and Brittany is pretty, right? But her mom was just like, that's what women do if they're largely unhappy in their own lives. They'll lash out. And to a certain extent, I feel like, yeah, that's true. I kind of do. I understand what her mom is saying, of course, trying to support her daughter. And unfortunately, now that I think about it, there is some truth there because I feel like if Kenya was in a better place with, like, her ex-husband, Mark, or if she was in a better place financially where she hadn't have, sunk $400,000 her daughter's college fund into her hair spa. And because, she was crying about, she was like really scared. She was crying about it in earlier episodes. I feel like she wasn't so stressed and pressured, and she was in a better place in her life with her relationships. Even if she would have had a better relationship with her own mother, right? I don't feel like she would have chosen to retaliate against Brittany in such a public and just a horrible way. So, but yeah, Brittany's like, when she goes low, I go high with Michelle Obama. I mean, just in my opinion, right. It's not even about necessarily going high when they go low. I just pay people dust because I don't have the time. And when I say that, like, our time is so finite. Like the past few days, and I still have this, like, a couple work projects that I have to finish, but I'm like, I have got to start making some content, you know, um, because I really want to take my YouTube channel more seriously and I want to be more consistent. And it's like trying to fit everything into the day. I don't be having the time to have petty arguments because they're so draining, you know? It's like we have 24 hours of each day, and 8 of that you're supposed to be sleeping, you know? Then you have the time when we're eating, and that's not even talking about like cooking, preparing, like doing all these things. And it's just like working. Who has the time to be going back and forth, hiring private investigators, putting people's, intimate acts on billboards and doing all this stuff? Girl, if you would have spent half of that time and money into your business, we wouldn't be here and you would still be collecting those Bravo checks instead of making us wait for you on YouTube, which she still has not gone live yet. Dang. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so Porsha sits down with Shamea, and she says that it's her therapist who told her to go into self preservation and to focus on herself, which, again, I don't feel like Porsha has an issue doing that. But I feel like, okay, so she's taking her therapist's advice. She may be exaggerating that a little bit because that's what Porsha tends to do. I don't feel like Porsha has ever had an issue with being selfish. Like I said, in the earlier seasons, she was hyper focused on being like the perfect wife for Cordell, but again, we soon learned that that may not even have been what he wanted. If he did want it, he didn't want it with Porsha Williams, okay? But I feel like putting too much focus on anybody, right? Whether it's your spouse, your child, like, anybody, um, can be unhealthy. So, but she says that her therapist told her self-preservation and to focus on herself. So that's what she's doing. Okay. So then she talks about how it's an issue with Drew filming with Dennis, right? Like she told Dennis, she's like, if you're filming with anybody other than me, it's going to be a problem. Again, like I said, I never felt like Porsha had an issue being selfish or having self-preservation. I will say this: I feel like she does put too much emphasis on the men in her life to the point where if they do something, if they step out of this box that she's created for them, then it's a problem. Like in my mind, it's about controlling them and taking the focus off of her and the work that she has to do. Because when you put people on a pedestal and they step off of it, because nobody's going to be able to stay on a pedestal forever, then you're upset because they're not living up to the idea that you have of them instead of seeing them for the real person. So I feel like, Porsha, she's a girl's girl. She loves love, but she reminds me of Jennifer Lopez in that aspect where she will idolize, love and marriage and just the status and not really for who the man is. If you guys remember in the earlier seasons, she was yelling at Kenya. She's like, you don't know what it means to be a wife. And now they're both, divorced. So Porsha twice removed. It's like, instead of focusing on being a friend, with these men, being a friend with your spouse, learning who they are. Are they men of integrity? Are they men of, high character? Can you trust them? Do they have fraudulent past? Are they good with money? Are they, you know what I mean? these are questions that we need to be asking before we walk down the aisle, because again, the weddings that she had in Nigeria and here were gorgeous, gorgeous, but like Aretha Franklin said, gowns, beautiful gowns. Where is the substance? That's what Shamea has with Gerald. I think that Porsha wanted. And who doesn't? I mean, that's great. But she has to find somebody with a high level of integrity and not just fall for the scam. So Shamia, she tells her, that her and Gerald are trying to have more babies, and she asks how IVF is going, and she's having, it's complicated, it's complex, but she's working through it. And so then she asks about the embryo that she has with Simon. Again, I don't think the Simon is even allowed to be back on U.S. Soil after all of this, because this is not his first time being, deported out of the country. He's been kicked out multiple times. So I feel like this time it's probably going to be permanent. And Simon's what? Isn't he like in his 60s or close to it? I feel like, this would not be the optimal or ideal time to be trying to bring new babies into the world, especially if they won't have contact with the father. So I don't know what Portia's going to do with those embryos, but um, yeah, her situation is a lot different than Shamia's. And she basically said that um, Simon was with her for clout, which again, you could tell on his social media he was. She said that he was always at war with her because he wanted to be a star, and he did. You know what I mean? Listen. Alicia Keys said, "New York, New York. This is where dreams are made of. This is where stars are born. Hollywood, okay, movie stars. The U.S. is where people come for clout, social currency, social status, social capital. To be Hollywood movie stars. That's what we're known for, and he definitely wanted that. And the gag is Portia sold him that dream, of being a real housewife and, being flirtatious, um, and essentially, taking him while he was still married to Fallon. So, of course, he wanted, he reminded me of Peter Thomas in that regard. Peter, it was always on social media, and he's another one that's about to be behind bars, right? Because he's bad with money and just not a man of high moral fiber and integrity. And it's just like, he was always in women's business, and he was even flirting with Porsha in her DMs. And Porsha was like, listen, you got way more important things to worry about than what I'm doing over here. You should probably not be in my DMs and be more worried about your taxes and going to prison. And that's real. So yeah. The ladies end up at Kelly's house for the peace brunch, and the food looks really good. Shout out to Kelly's. I would love to go to her chicken and waffles place if I ever get back down to Atlanta. But yeah, she is. I like Kelly. I think Kelly is one of my favorite housewives. Like her, Shamea, they just seem real cool, real down to earth, just around the way girls. And I love that. So, yeah, the ladies come over, she has it outside. She has a chef making the food, and um, everybody's out there, and Brittany comes in with just this like chip on her shoulder, unfortunately. Well, everyone except for Portia. Portia didn't show up. She said she's not feeling good, so I hope that she feels better. I feel like she just didn't want to film, but that's only again hurting her pockets, because the more scenes that you're in, I think that's how they're. Who knows how their contracts are set up? She might have had it differently now that she's a seasoned vet, but hopefully she feels better. But yeah, the ladies walk in, they have the mimosas, and everything is set up outside with the lemons and the blue. Reminds me of Capri. So pretty. And she has a table setting for the ghost of Kenya. Everyone's like, why would you do that? um, but yeah, everything was really nice. Angela had her fan. She says that's her co-star. She said that she is not perimenopausal though. Don't get it twisted. She says she's just the baddest bee in the room. Like, okay, Angela, you and your fan, y'all go ahead and be the baddest bees in the room. But Kelly was talking about how her husband was in contempt. He was a court. He was in jail. He owes her $10,000 in back child support and only paid her once. That is a mess. I don't understand how people can create children. I mean, these are whole human beings with half your DNA and just turn your back on them. That will forever just blow my mind. I can't even do that to my two dogs. And, I have two little Yorkie poos and they're just my little, I'm like thinking to myself, like, if I go on a trip, I need to take them on the plane. And now I'm nervous. I haven't even gone anywhere because I'm scared that, the planes are going to they're dropped out of the sky like flies. But I could never see myself turning my back on my own flesh and blood. Like, that's crazy to me. Um, but when Brittany gets there, child, it's just a mess. Like, she has a lot of unhealed pain, unhealed hurt. And you can just tell that, this girl really is crying out for help. I really hope, and I'm not even trying to be funny, but I really hope that she finds a really good therapist, because her lashing out on just everyone around her is not healthy. And I can see why her relationships with her family is strained. And that might be why her husband, keeps his distance, because she just seems very angry and very volatile. Um, they asked her how she was doing, and she's like, it's been rough, but, you know, I feel like the hardest part is behind us. She starts out okay, but then when Angela, well, let me back up. Even before Angela asks her the question about her insurance, um, Kelly was saying that the brunch was for her, was for Brit, and that she was saying that they reached out to Kenya to ask her about her feelings, and Brit's like, "Oh, you guys reached out to Kenya?" Boom! Like, her whole disposition switched up, and she just starts going off, and it's just like, again, right? Kenya has been on this show for countless seasons. This is her first season. They don't even know each other that well. I'm sure that most people know Kenya, being associated with the Housewives, but also, she was doing that as a reactionary measure toward Brittany. If Brittany had never, gotten so upset that Kenya didn't want to hug her and she was threatening her with all kind of pow pows, then Kenya wouldn't have gone back and created those billboards. And so both ladies were wrong. Both ladies were acting out of hurt and, anger. And so, yeah, it only makes sense to check on both of them, right? But Brittany going off, telling people to read the MF in room and this, that, and the other, it's like, girl, calm down. Kelly made you a whole brunch and you're out here cussing people out. She a good one, because I would have asked her, I would have escorted her kindly off the premises, because what you're not going to do is disrespect me at my own house while I'm out here throwing you a peace brunch. And the fact that it was titled a peace brunch, like, you can go in peace. Peace be with you out the door, out the same door that you came in, because that was so disrespectful. Brittany, I'm like, girl, I'm looking at her mama sideways. I really am, because I'm like, how did your mother raise you? You don't go to people's houses and cuss them out because they are open and honest with you. and asked, the person that you got beef with if they were okay as well. It's not like she invited Kenya to the brunch. And even if she did that, be mature enough and be a lady enough, you know what I mean, to have a handle on your emotions and be an adult and eat your chicken and, you know what I mean, go thank her for her brunch and her time and her effort and go home. Um, yeah, Brittany she's not one of my favorite housewives. She's probably my least favorite, to be honest. My least favorite housewife. Then they show a picture of Kelly's security guard, which I'm glad the fact that his name is Little Kenny and he looked like a whole linebacker. But again, it makes me sad that she needs that because of her ex, but I'm glad that he's there. And also, these ladies, they might need security because there's always some issues. But yeah, so Brittany talks about how she's being investigated and she's losing her license. And Brittany's like, because of all of the backlash, which there's all kind of videos now being made that's essentially not true. But Angela's asking her, she's like, well, I'm in this field as well. And you don't just lose your license um, because somebody starts a rumor or you're being investigated. Because it was only 48 hours after Kenya's event. So how in the world would she be able to lose her license that quickly? Now, granted, I'm not a real estate agent, or no, I'm sorry, not real estate, insurance agent, right? Because I think that was the field that she's in. But Angela said, Angela said the little mimosa, her dog, came out of her because she was like, Earth. Because Brittany was like, she was on one, she was on 10. Like, girl, what is wrong with you? Angela's saying, listen, I'm in the exact same field. And she's curious. She would want to know. I would want to know as well. Like, how is it that you would lose your license over something that you didn't initiate, right? That you were essentially the victim of in the short span of time of 48 hours? The math is not mathing. People who unalive individuals don't lose their licenses and their livelihoods that quickly. There's due process, there's an investigation, there's and then there's appeals processes, all kind of things. Like Brittany, it's just the more I hear her talk, the less I like her. I mean, she just rubs me the wrong way on a consistent basis. I can't think of one time where she's appeared on screen where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, she's, yeah. I hope this is her last season, and I mean that sincerely because I don't like her at all. Um, but anyway, so Shamea, she hears the church bells ringing, and she's like, ooh, you know, I'm sure she said a quick prayer, and she gets the ladies up um, for the electric slide and slide it on out. Right? She's like dancing brings people together, and trying to uplift the mood. And that's again one of the reasons why I really like Shamea. She's one of my favorites. She's probably my favorite housewife out of the entire group this season. She's really the only one that's winning. That's not like completely stressed out and dealing with drama and all kind of foolishness. Actually has a loving husband and who's wealthy and affluent and loves her back and like because I feel bad because the rest of the ladies are just going through it. But yeah, she brings the girls together, which was needed because Brittany, baby, listen, um, between the lies, her yelling and screaming and cussing out Angela, just I feel like the only reason why she said read the room was because she felt that people, the group, essentially they were backing her and they were on her side because Kenya was wrong. But what you're not about to do is tell a bold-faced lie, get mad when Angela calls you out on it because she is in your same field. She has a license as well. and then try to cuss her out and, and blow up and project that anger because of whatever needs, that you have, whether it's in your marriage, your family, your relationships, your business, whatever it is, whatever those needs are that are not being met, you don't want to project that on other people, because that's not their problem. That's not their issue. That's yours, and it takes work. Listen, it takes work. Adulting, life is hard, but Brittany needs to find some kind of coping tools to get through that. And threatening people, threatening other housewives is not one. Cussing out housewives is not one. Lying about the status of her license is not another. She needs to grow up quickly. But anyway, shout out to Shamea and Kelly. They're my breakout favorites for this season. Angela has a whole lot going on. I feel like she's in denial about not only her fan, but a lot of things. A lot. Porsha is, Porsha. She's all about herself and trying to control any and everything, except hopefully she controls herself this season. I really hope that Porsha doesn't put the paws on anybody this season, because it seems like, every other season she's in a fight with somebody. Yeah, Cynthia, she took a step back being a friend of, which I feel like is smart. She has her little booth thing over there in Amsterdam. He's cute. He's a tall drink of water. TMZ caught up with them, so she's doing that. And yeah, so I like this season. It's pretty good. I'm, looking forward to hearing Drew's album. Hopefully, hearing what Kenya has to say if she ever decides to grace us with her presence. Come on, Ms. Moore. I'm still a fan, even though she's a mess and a half. But, I will let you guys know if she ever signs on, if she decides to do that. If not, oh well, we'll keep it moving, keep it pushing, right? Onward and upward over here. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk with you in the next one. Take care, Aces. Bye.